All right, welcome everybody. Uh, it's 6:03 p.m. and I'll call the meeting of the Whately Housing Committee to order. First item on our agenda is approval of minutes, which Montserrat has faithfully prepared and drafted and circulated. I did look at those minutes of our last meeting and I had no particular corrections. So um, I would, any other comments or corrections on the minutes? Otherwise, a motion to approve.
I appreciated the smiley face icon, Montserrat. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Make motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
Okay, motion has been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, Jerry has seconded the motion. So roll call vote because we're on Zoom. Fred Orlowski,
Yes.
Jerry Lemon,
Yes.
Montserrat, who's like Cher, it just goes by that name,
Yeah.
and Fred Barron. Oh,
Not
no,
voting.
Fred doesn't vote. No, no, no. Don't even try. And Brant, yes. Okay, unanimously approved. So our next item is about discussing the DeMeo property at 268 State Road. I know that Jerry has some updates to share. I'd also be happy to, screen share and talk through the community housing bylaw and take any questions about that because it may relate to what we could do easily under existing bylaws at the DeMeo property. But I defer to Jerry. Do you want to give us your update first? Do you want to hear about the bylaw? What do you think?
I'll provide a quick update. A few things have progressed, but there's still more to be done. I've circulated the proposal from Aquatech, which was both an analysis of the site with the concept that the water produced by that waste treatment plant was pure enough to be able to be dumped directly into the stream under Mass law. A variance, not a variance, but a notice of intent needs to be filed by the developer to do that, but they don't see it being a problem.
That would be with our Conservation Commission, am I right?
There was reference in his cover letter. I'm not sure which body that would be.
So Montserrat sits on the Conservation Commission.
I do. And I'm not, that sounds more like a Board of Health thing. I don't remember going to investigate any of that type of situation. Like Board of Health does leach fields and that kind of thing, perking.
Yeah, right. It's something he references general permit for Mass. I'm assuming that's Mass General 58,000 allows direct discharge of treated domestic water, but there's a need to submit. He did not say to whom a notice of intent to come under that general permitting.
I can check on that.
Okay.
That'd be a great action to take next meeting of the Conservation Commission.
Yeah. So the cost is around, call it 270 or so plus installation. So 370,000 rounded up, call it 400 grand. That's a big nut. But what it winds up doing, the waste treatment plant only takes up 400 square feet of land. Mm-hmm. So that renders the entire, call it 2 acres of buildable. Buildable is essentially functional and usable. So opportunity to create some green space in addition to a little more of a setback from the road, et cetera, depending on how a developer might see that. I think that the fact that the town owns the land, maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but because you own the land, you're not receiving revenue now, could be a good opportunity to incentivize a developer to go this route, create more by just potentially giving them the land or coming up with some sort of incentive, give them the opportunity to limit their construction costs in a very positive way. I then spoke with trying to find developers. I talked with John Roboleski, who developed Pine Plains Estates here, about the concept. His concern was stormwater runoff, that there may not, he's not sure how that would be handled. He found the idea of the wastewater treatment plant to be interesting, but he thought there were too many constrictions on easements, et cetera. And it may be he's not reviewed that study that was produced by the town. So I thought I'd ask about forwarding that to him, and I'm happy to do that. Um, I don't know. I went through that study again and didn't see any reference to stormwater management in the study that was proposed with the multiple development options. So I'm not quite sure what that is, but I have some other thoughts on it. But John at least is, I think, open to listening and may be able to connect us with other people as well if it's something that's not in his wheelhouse. I also reached out to Kendrick Property Management, local property management firm, to see if they had any developer contacts, but they're primarily condo operators that are received properties are turned over by developers. Until I understand that stormwater concern, and maybe the conservation has this, I don't know. I don't want to reach out to the folks at Win yet because I don't want to waste their time. But it's something that John Roboleski brought up, so I can sort of leave it at that. But I think it's potentially doable. I don't see the huge issue with stormwater management if it's one building with a roof and the garage underneath, rather than a lot of surface area being created by parking. I don't see that being a huge deal, but I'm not the one that can answer that question. So I'll just throw it out there.
Stormwater runoff is something that Conservation Commission is
Okay,
involved with, and I can talk to Scott about both of those things, the
okay,
wastewater treatment and stormwater runoff.
that'd be terrific. Yeah, the wastewater treatment,
See what would
I
be
don't,
required.
yeah,
Sorry, go
the
ahead.
wastewater treatment is in ground, and then it just basically similar to a sump pump in your basement. I'm assuming is just pumping the water out in a clear stream, well under the levels of toxin that are required by that general permit. It's, I think it's interesting, but yes, it would be very helpful to understand what the stormwater management concerns might be.
I would think the stormwater should be a, a problem that is manageable, and that wouldn't be something would block a project there.
No,
Okay.
there are always ways to manage it.
Right.
It just needs
How
to
do
be
you?
done right.
This cost of 400,000, whatever, who would be responsible for that? Would it be a developer or the town or what?
Be the developer. And I was suggesting that you could consider incentivizing the developer by just giving them the land
Yeah.
instead of having to purchase the property. Give them the land. Obviously, there have to be some sort of legal agreement that he has to go develop it as affordable housing or whatever we may lead to.
Mhm.
So
But a developer would have to do a septic system anyway, which would not cost as much as that. But it's not that the full 400,000 is over and above what they would have to do otherwise. You take
correct.
off
They'd have to,
the cost
right.
of what it would cost to do a septic. And at least on one of these, these plans where it's underneath the driveway, that would be an expensive septic system.
Excellent point, Fred. The other advantage of having this wastewater treatment plant, it creates a lot more green space, which allows, I think, for a setback from 5 and 10, as well as potentially greening the area to make it more attractive, both for the residents and anybody that's driving by the vacant lot at the moment. So
I assume that we would want some or all of the units to be affordable.
correct.
I think that's where you're going to run into a problem of finding a developer.
Well, there are developers that deal specifically, as my last company did, in affordable housing. There are heavy incentives from the state, but also Mass Housing, by example, has a workforce housing program. I'd have to check to see how current the levels of funding are, but it used to be up to $100,000 a unit. And so for a developer that drops in 36 units, that's 3.6 million. toward the construction cost. And then they'd have to use other layers of financing to solve the capital stack problem. I don't know how much a building like this might cost. I do have a client who is used to building podium with apartments above. He did one on the beach up in Revere. I could check in with him and see if I can get at least some ballpark costs that I can circulate to the committee so we can at least start to understand, is it economically viable to go down that path?
Well, what I've been reading in the paper and talking to local developers, I know units, they say for a unit, it's like 500,000 is the average cost to develop a affordable, either affordable or any kind of living units. They're looking at 500,000, and you can look at what Sanderson Place was in Sunderland. I don't know what they cost, but it wasn't. It was significant.
Right. So if it's 500K to build it, if there's a 100K subsidy, if they're all within the definition of workforce housing, which is typically 60% of area median income up to 120%, somewhere in that flow. Now you're at 400, so that's a $12 million issue.
Yeah.
Potentially, yes, but there are also incentives for developers within the world of affordable financing that they can get what they need to be able to make these deals work. Happens all the time. Just have to find the right person. A market rate developer might also be interested in the site, but I don't know that that's the main goal of the community. You could do market rate with a set aside for affordable under the, call it the inclusionary zoning side. So you could have a building that's 20% set aside. That's not a lot of units when you're talking 35 to 40 units. But at least
it would actually be a lot of units for Whately compared to what we have now.
Correct.
Just
Good
two.
point.
Two,
Right.
yeah.
Two, and you want to continue to build on that.
I think that our target number is 10,
Okay.
if I remember correctly,
And so on that point,
as far as our allocated share of affordable housing for Franklin County.
so before we get too much further down this road, we do have to look at the zoning piece, because my impression is that Whately's existing zoning is not going to allow a sizable development on that property. The community housing bylaw that we can talk through, limits it to like 12 units and maybe 3 or 4 structures. And so we're going to have to figure out whether what we want can be done under existing zoning. And if not, either we might have to ask, can we get new zoning through the various hoops? And that's a planning board and town meeting issue.
Yeah, I also don't know if 36 or even 24 units would fly with the community politically.
Well, right. This is why the community housing bylaw was written the way it was, which, we might conclude was rather conservative, but we should understand that it went through a number of, iterations to get to it where it currently stands.
I think the selling point to the community would be if we're able to wave that magic wand, it's workforce housing so that people that work in the area aren't forced out by the cost of renting, and also could be senior focused so that it's taking care of people who want to remain in the town but can't remain in their homes anymore for a variety of reasons. And so I think there's a selling piece. I also think it's blighted real estate on 5 and 10 that's not helping the town at all. And if you have the opportunity to create a revenue stream from some level of taxes, you may need a pilot here for a while, but some level of tax revenue, that's a good thing for the town, in addition to just cleaning up space. And you can make a very attractive building that would, I think, fit in, as does the Sunderland project, within the town and not be just a blighted eyesore on the side of the road. I think we could make it farmhouse style, very attractive, with its siding, et cetera, and even its placement and potentially landscaping.
So let's just, I would propose that we look at the community housing bylaw and see if it's
Okay.
just overly restrictive. Because I hear everything that you're saying, and I support your point of view, Jerry, believe me. But zoning is a very crude tool that often works against us. I'm sure you've dealt with this before, right? You have,
Yep.
developer's a great idea for a project, but zoning is just won't let it happen. And the zoning board of appeal just can't do a variance because the law won't basically let that happen. So
So
why
the
don't we first
Yep.
look through the lens of what our zoning will allow and whether we can live with that, or we have to start a parallel effort. And then it gets complicated. Like if are we going to try to spot zone that parcel to make special rules? And that's not that usually doesn't fly too well. Can we create a little overlay district? Anyway, I don't want to go too far down that road.
I
Right?
would think that before we start worrying about the housing code, we don't have a project in mind specifically yet.
right.
Is
Yeah.
the important thing is finding a developer who would be willing to do that groundwork, work with us, and ultimately figure out whether or not it is doable. But we can't give a developer that answer up front of
No, but I
of what
had the
is
impression Jerry already was envisaging, like 36 units or some number that I don't know can possibly work within Whately's current zoning.
Right.
well, yeah,
So what?
but I think what the first critical piece is to find someone willing to act to be the developer, or at least consider being a developer for it.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, would a
Because
developer take,
we're not going to be able to if we do all the zoning stuff first. What are we saying to a potential developer? Well, maybe 24, maybe 36, maybe 12, maybe. I think that it's for a developer who does, as Jerry says, affordable projects to know what might be doable, to look at our code and see what can be done within the code and what might not need to be changed in the code.
So, our
But
Fred,
I think the developers, finding someone willing to do it or even look at it is the key first step in the process.
Right. I
clarifying
think
question. Fred, are you saying that we should go to a developer and say how many units make sense and can we do that within our
I
zoning
think that
or
what we need to do is I go to developers and say, we've got a parcel of land on which we would like to build affordable housing. We have a very rough blueprint in this report of what some people think might be doable. Would you be willing to look at it and see if this is something work with us to develop a plan for housing on this lot?
my question was, um, are you saying that we don't decide how many units we want before we go to a developer? We let them
Right,
figure that out?
right. Because we
Okay.
don't know what zoning will allow. We don't know what the community would go for. I have to assume that a developer would want to go for as many units as possible. So wouldn't be worried about them coming in too light on number of units. But I think our problem in the past with anything has always been finding a developer who's willing to work on what would for them be a small scale project.
right. I'm looking at the community housing excerpt that Brant sent around. If it stays at 12 units, I don't think you're going to find a developer that's going to really be, at least not on the scale that I'm used to,
Right.
that's going to be interested in it. I think what might be helpful for the developer to say, hey, this is the current code, but the town would look at you as a friendly partner and we do everything we can if you tell us what you think will work to help make it work. I think that's what you're saying, Fred.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah, but we just need to find a developer who, looking at the bare bones of the lot and what we might want, would be willing to even take a next step. Most that you went to, I'm sure, would just say, no, thank you. It's not for us.
Yeah.
Right.
But ultimately, finding a developer is the key step
Agree.
in any of this.
Yeah.
Without a developer, there's no project.
Go ahead, Fred Orlowski.
That was tried a few years ago. I'm guessing 8, 9, 10 years ago, when it was on the market for any use by anybody, and there was no response, and there was no restrictions of what would have been there, the kind of units, the kind of development you wanted, and there was no interest. I mean, the housing committee back then, we talked to the realtors that were listing it. They keep changing from one realtor to another, and they say that the location is not the best, I guess, and there wasn't interest because it's not near 91, not near any access points. It's not on maybe direct, it's on a bus route, but not direct. There was no interest without any kind of restrictions. Nobody was even calling to inquiring about it, they say. So I think if we're gonna look for a developer, I think we got to give them some information as to what you could do with the property, maybe. And the second point I have with workforce development, workforce units or whatever, there are some of them already existing in town, and some of the major, I guess I call it agricultural companies or farms have workforce housing for their people. And if we're going to advertise this as a workforce housing unit, I think we ought to be careful in coordinating with the farmers in here to see how that's going to impact them, or if it is even needed. Is workforce housing needed in town?
Aren't the farmers, isn't that temporary housing?
Well, I don't know
Temporary workers?
agreements we have, even for assessing, for the board assessors. We have no idea what workforce housing is, the number of units, number of people living there. It's just a commercial building that's assessed. It doesn't matter for that. It's not under multiple units, multiple uses. It's just out there as a use. And I know developers, I know agriculture, or actually farmers in town have workforce housing for their people. Whether it's adequate or not, I don't know. And if we're going to offer something that detracts from them attracting workers, I think we got to be careful how we approach that.
Certainly worth an outreach to the Ag Commission at an appropriate time. I think I generally agree with the idea that we should be seeing what contacts we can make with developers. I have to admit, though, because I'm, come from the planning board perspective, I imagine that if I'm a developer and I'm told, or I was like, I would want to do it this way, but your zoning won't allow it. Now, from a developer's point of view, it seems like that's a big risk. Now zoning needs to change, town meeting has to vote for it. So I don't know what to say, but if we want to just try to talk to developers and say, look at our zoning and tell us, what do you think you can do within our zoning and what changes to our zoning might be necessary otherwise? I guess
I think letting a developer know that the town wants to be a friendly partner in this and will facilitate it to the extent that it can. We can't guarantee a town meeting vote on anything.
Right.
But if there are certain loosening of restrictions, whether it be for setbacks or lot coverage or whatever is necessary, that we would certainly want to encourage that. As far as Fred's point about it having been offered, I think that there, as opposed to 10, 12, whenever years ago, that the lot was offered as a lot, there's a much greater imperative from the state level down for housing. than there was at that time.
Probably.
And there is more grant funding and other facilitating elements that are now available that would not have been
Yeah.
then. So I think it's worth an effort to see if anything. I mean, it could be another dead end. We don't know. But
It's
I
worth-
think it's worth seeing if we can find someone who might be interested in developing housing there.
So, Brant, was the zoning changed for the Blue School when they decided to?
No, there was no change in zoning. The Blue School project, again, I think originally it was only 6 or 7 units, or then it was up to 9, but it was doable entirely within what was then existing zoning. So
Okay,
again, but Jerry seems to be suggesting that small housing projects of 9, 10, 11, 12 units, particularly when like quarter or more of them might need to be SHI units, if that's not going to be attractive and we need to change the zoning to allow much bigger, much more units, our existing zoning starts to require much bigger lot sizes. It honestly discourages large housing developments. That was the kind of
Right.
baked into our current zoning. And the community housing was an attempt to find a comfortable middle ground to allow somewhat largish units, 12-ish units, with the idea that a quarter of them would be affordable.
but does our existing, or how does our existing zoning address workforce housing? Is that?
It doesn't. Our existing zoning, like many communities, is all about single-family homes on big lots. That's what we do. That's what we like. And if you want to even put a 2-family, we make it very complicated.
And
So-
I think that wording and the way the code is constructed is why we would have to have a developer come and give an idea of what he would want to do, so that we would know how we would want to change the zoning. We can't go about going to the planning board or town meeting and saying, here's what we want to do, without knowing what we want to accomplish at the end.
Yeah,
Right.
And have to change it again because it doesn't quite fit.
sure.
Yeah, I think you want to do one shot at that.
Right.
I take it I like the idea of, Jerry trying to make other contacts. I take it there's no, legal things we have to worry about. Ultimately, I imagine, would we have to do an RFP or a sort of an open bid process versus just sort of a networking and finding some willing developer? Fred Barron, do you know
I
what?
think we could just find a willing developer, because we could find a legal way to work it, like lease the land for $1 a year or something, rather than put out an RFP to sell it, or put it up to bid. I'm sure there are ways to work around that to come up with, to facilitate a project like this. Like I'm sure Sunderland did with their project. I'm sure they didn't have to go through, all the RFP hoops
Okay.
to get that done.
Yeah, and I think that project's at least 50 units. Is that correct?
Yeah, I forget the number, but it's a good sized project.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll continue I'll reach out to John Robleski. Hopefully Montserrat can get some clarity on how the stormwater is done. And then I can reach back to my management company to see if perhaps they can give us local developers, if it's not something because of its size that they would have interest in, but they may be able to just provide some guidance to us, which at least you have knowledge.
Yeah.
One other thing that I'm sure you all know, but just want to make clear, that any impetus for a project like this is going to come from this committee. It's not going to come from above. Uh, when we have a community development administrator, we may get be able to get some assistance there, but this is going to have to come bottom up. It's not going to come top down of
Yeah.
what we want to do. So this committee is going to have to be the push.
That's fair.
Yeah, and
I said, I'm sure you all knew that, but just that there's nobody else out there going to come in and
right, no saviors, right.
right.
And I'm, happy to work whatever we have to work on the planning board side.
But I think that's down the road
Yeah.
once there's a plan that we need to tweak the codes or amend the code to facilitate.
Got it. So I'll continue on my hunt. May I ask about, while we're still in this section, on the development side, about two other sites that I believe the town owns. I've not been there, but there's a town-owned property on Old State Road. Is that a site that would be considered developable?
I don't think the town owns it.
The town owns it.
I don't think so. I went,
Oh, okay. I was reading.
I don't remember a buildable lot on Old State Road.
unless you're talking down by the, right down by the beach area, down that way of the road, the other way by Sugarloaf Shops, I don't think the town owns anything there.
I was thinking down by Sugarloaf Shops, the town doesn't own anything. Tri-Town Beach is on the other side.
Yeah, but there is land on Tri-Town Beach.
Right. I believe I read about it in the housing production plan. There was a list of, at that time, a couple of properties that were for sale, land for sale, but then referenced that town, that Old State Road site. I'm trying to find it right now.
Yeah,
I think Fred and I both know the town lands pretty well, and there's certainly nothing buildable that the town owns.
In the housing production plan on Old State Road, map lot 32-048, 33 acres, of which 10 acres are available for small village-style residential developments.
So that's the town, the Tri-Town Beach.
That's Tri-Town
lot.
Beach. Yeah. You're not building there.
Got it. Okay, that's fair. And then I'll just take that off my thought list. I had one other thought. Bear with me for a moment. But Fred, you'd be very familiar with it, Fred Barron. That highway department campus.
Yep.
That potentially there might be some relocations,
yep,
some expansions, etc. I went by there the other day, and that ball field. I looked at that and said, "Wow, that's it's not right on 5 and 10, but you could still walk down there to where the bus is."
Yeah.
But could that be considered, if we run into other constraints relative to this 5 and 10 site, as something that potentially a developer could look at for us as well?
Not if the highway garage goes there.
But if the transfer station goes to the 5 and 10, then you could expand out the highway garage to the right, create what he needs in terms of accessible bays, have your cold storage, etc., and then potentially, I'm just thinking of sort of a campus plan, there may be an opportunity to use that land. So may require a couple steps and swaps, but it's just a thought as I was driving by the other day.
I don't think there's enough land there, though, to do all of that, what you're just describing. It sounds good, but I know.
And I don't know that there may be enough land to the east side of the current highway garage to build a new garage on that side.
Yep.
But it would be very tight at best. And we looked at that. You've got a problem of getting trucks in there because you've still got the police station there.
Right.
That is going to make maneuvering big trucks and equipment difficult. There's an easement that runs through that parking lot.
Yep.
To the cell tower, which cuts down the amount that you can use. as I said, we looked at it and it's still a possibility, but very unlikely that the garage could go on that side.
on that side. One last question then, as I was driving around. The Whately Woods cabins on
Oh,
5 and 10.
yeah.
Yep.
I ran across the wife, I guess they own it as a husband and wife team, and they apparently had a meeting with the town
Yeah,
sometime
I
in the.
was in that meeting.
Okay. Can you give any feedback? Because I started talking to her about affordable housing, and she said they'd be interested potentially in that, but I don't know what the meeting was about. So,
Yeah, so I can tell you what that meeting was about. That was uh, Pete Kane and I and Erica at the time, the previous community development administrator, pre-Rusty, met at the request of the owner. So basically, the story was the older adults who had developed the Whately Woods, the son was now involved. I
right.
think the mother had passed away. The father was no longer involved. So now there's a son kind of owning it. There are several cabins that were kind of not in good repair. And he was curious about like what could be done and what would be involved. And like if he wanted to rehab and expand footprints. And so there was a meeting really along the lines of what could he do with or without getting special permitting and all of that. And we did discuss the idea that we talked to him about the community housing bylaw, that if he was open to the idea of doing some, housing development on that property, then there might be a bylaw that would make that possible. We encouraged him to get a land use attorney to advise him because he had no knowledge. Like he didn't know anything about zoning. He would just own the land and it was relatively new to owning the land and trying to figure out what he was going to do with it. So it was a very preliminary meeting.
Yeah.
And we kind of left it with the ball was going to be in his court. And that was the last we heard.
I'd be willing to follow up with him if I could get his contact information.
Yeah.
His wife was definitely interested in affordable housing. I started talking with her a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And she said, you really need to talk to my husband. I left my number, but he hasn't called me. But if you have contact information, maybe that's something I can do.
I'll check my notes.
Okay.
And I'll look through some old emails because I think I have an email from this guy. But
Do you remember
I
how long
think
ago
the
that
other
meeting
thing
was?
that was and I'll let you in just 1 second, Montserrat.
Sorry.
I think he didn't want to sell the land. Like he was going to continue to own the land and wanted to know kind of what he could do with it and what would be involved. So, Montserrat.
Oh, I was just wondering about how long ago was that meeting?
Well, I think it was within the last year because
If Erica was there, Erica was only there from like December of last year to March or April of this year.
That narrows it right down.
Right.
So I would have to say it was earlier this year.
Yeah.
There's two other properties I think that are potential. One, we talked last time, I'm still trying to get a hold of the owner on LaSalle Drive extension. And the other one, if we're looking at on State Road, hotel units, what about the burned out unit across from Tom's Hot Dog? I mean, is that person willing to deal with the town on putting some kind of housing there?
We have had no contact from that person. Clearly, they've got no interest in rehabbing or rebuilding it.
No.
It's been now, almost 18 months, 16 months since the fire, and they've done zero on the property.
I know a little bit about that.
Okay.
the family that owns the hotel that burned down are planning to sell it, and Concom permitted the tearing down the building because
Okay.
it's in front of wetland, so they're planning to sell it
Okay,
a
well,
lot.
but even so, if they're planning to sell it, they're looking, I don't think the town is looking to buy that
Right.
size commercial property on 510, which I assume they're looking for decent money because it is commercial zoned.
Well,
Uh,
it would go by the assessed value. I don't think we can pay more than assessed value for property if the town buys. So,
whatever it is, I don't think the town's in a position to make that kind of investment in that
Right.
property. And we've got several big projects coming
Yeah.
at us, and I don't think that investing in a piece of real estate is a likely thing for the town to do in the near future.
how would that be different than the one on the woods there further up? I mean, the town doesn't.
Well, the Whately Woods, we're talking about the owners seeing what they can do, not to sell the property,
Correct.
but work with the town maybe to develop.
Right.
And
Maybe I
that
can
would
just
be different. I don't think that the owners of the motel are looking to develop affordable housing.
right.
I think they're looking to sell a piece of property zoned commercial,
uh,
from what Montserrat says.
Okay,
As opposed to us trying to see what we can do with the DeMayo property, which we already own.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, if I can get the gentleman excited enough to think about it, maybe I can help walk him down that path of what he could do, and he can find somebody smart to help him through the process. And at least that would then potentially help with your goal to get yourself to the 10 units.
Right. Well, I think that he will be in the same position we're in of once he gets an idea of what he might be able to do, finding a developer, finding someone
Right.
who can build or develop on the
Right.
property.
But potentially, though, there could be revenue streams for him to update his existing, let's call them cabins.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them other than drive by.
I've driven by and was not impressed.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But potentially, maybe there's another use for them that could provide him with a stronger revenue stream. It could be Section 8 housing in there that may do better than whatever he's getting now. So I just wanted to try and engage him in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I forwarded an email to you, Jerry, that has Andrew Clogston's contact information. So
Okay,
now you
great.
know how to reach him by email and phone. I also remember that Whately Woods property is actually pretty constrained because it also has like a stream running through it, and
Right.
so
Yeah, pretty much everything along there has a stream running through it or behind it.
yeah.
Yeah, got it. All right. Well, thank you for allowing me to take up time with this.
All right.
No,
Well, we are not going to go beyond 7 o'clock. So the one thing I did email you all a bunch of draft chapters, except for Fred Barron, who already has this. The town's been working with FERCOG, Franklin Regional Council of Governments, on a new comprehensive plan. They've dropped a few draft chapters for various boards and committees to review. And it turns out that we, the Housing Committee, are one of those boards and committees, along with the select board and the planning board, and et cetera, et cetera. But I want to draw your attention. In your inbox are like four draft chapters, plus an email, a PowerPoint deck, a recent briefing by Megan Rhodes of FERCOG to both the planning board and the select board, kind of overviewing these four chapters. And there's an open period for review and comment. But the housing chapter is interesting, and I commend it to everyone's attention. What I'm going to do for a few minutes here, if you will indulge me, is I just want to share my screen. I'm going to share this draft chapter, the housing chapter, and I want to jump a lot of the material in this comprehensive plan housing chapter actually was drawn from the recently completed housing production plan that we've talked about before. But these are some zoning recommendations. Hopefully you can see my screen. And I'll tell you that the planning board has, we're sort of open to doing some new zoning to support affordable housing. My personal sense is that some of the most impactful zoning changes that we could make are the kinds of things where this community might or might not not want to go there. For example, I don't know. I haven't been in this community long enough, but for example, have been various recommendations to allow certain kinds of things as of right, meaning you don't need a special permit and all that entails. There are, current zoning requires larger lot sizes and more frontage for two-family and multifamily units. And again, I don't know the history of how all of these things found their way into Whately's zoning bylaws, but I can only assume that they reflect what was at some point the will of the general residents of Whately to sort of keep Whately, rural and spread out and that sort of thing. But it makes it very hard to, especially with the costs of building houses. Fred Orlowski's right. If it's $500,000 to build like a single family unit or more. So what I've been told by a developer, JD Ross, who sits on the planning board, is that, they could, if it were much easier, like as of right, without big additional frontage and other penalties, to just do two-family housing, that could be a game changer. But I don't have a good feeling for what what Whately residents would accept or reject at a town meeting. So this is where I think this committee could be helpful. Like I could welcome, sort of a sense of this group based on your time in the town and who and what you think. It's like what sort of things might or might not fly. And if the housing committee were to be supportive of a particular kind of zoning change, like one of these recommendations out of the comprehensive plan, then it's something that we could start work on within the planning board. So I was a little rambling, but I guess maybe to turn it in the form of a question. Just looking at what you see on the screen right now under these zoning recommendations, are there any things there that you think that you either have a question about or you think, say, the planning board should prioritize? Or do you want to just think about it and talk about it at our next meeting?
Well, we do have multifamily units in town. I don't know if you call them duplexes or just multifamily. I think the last time I looked, there's like 25 multifamilies, how we call it for use for assessing purposes. There's probably a handful of 3-unit apartments, 3-unit housing, and then 4 or more. I think there's 2 or 3 that are 4 or more units in town already. So we do have some, but it's not like we're creating new areas. Well, we're adding to what we have, I guess you could say.
So the point is, and of course, yeah, I'm not saying that Whately has banned two or more, family units. Yes, they're out there. However, our current zoning, I think, generally requires that to build two-family or multifamily, it's not as of right. You need to get a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are mixed opinions about whether that's onerous or not. It's a step, it adds risk, it opens a project up to input from abutters who may just, not like it. And so generally, there have been recommendations like this from FERCog and others to allow more kinds of housing developments as of right and eliminate discretionary permitting. And also, there have been recommendations to like this second one. And I think typically to do a multifamily or a two-family or multifamily, each additional unit above the single family residence typically requires a larger lot size and more frontage.
I think that's the biggest deterrent in town to have more multifamily. It's a lot size and probably and a frontage. Well, not so much a frontage requirement, but the lot size, I would say.
And yes, I think it is a deterrent. And the question for this committee is, it's sort of a political question. What do we think is the temperature of this town? Like if are we as a housing committee comfortable with the idea of allowing multiple units without imposing these deterrents, like requiring additional lot sizes? I mean, some of this I think was about water, right? And septic.
Or, yeah,
But
that's probably when it started to.
but I don't always understand the logic. I mean, the zoning code sets rules, but it doesn't explain how those rules were arrived at or what the rationale is for them. And I've known, like I've read in things like this have come up, say, in Greenfield. I mean, a very different kind of community than Whately, but I do read about residents be getting up in arms at the idea that multifamily units would be allowed as of right, or that they would be allowed to take up more of the lot size or things like that. People raise all kinds of objections. And I would hate to put a lot of time and effort on the planning board into some zoning change that's intended to lower barriers to affordable housing or just housing in general in town, and then take it to a town meeting and have it go down in flames.
Brad, I think you may also need to make clear what zoning regulations can be bypassed by 40B.
All of them.
Pretty much all of them. So if some of the environmental you can't just go ignore, but a lot of the zoning you can. So if we're talking about affordable housing, I think we're going to be talking about, going around or ignoring some of the zoning laws, using 40B. But it has to be enough affordable units to be able to do that.
Right.
That's true. I mean, actually, that whole concept of a so-called friendly 40B, where we basically do it we do it ourselves as a way of getting around sticky zoning rules on a particular parcel. I mean, maybe that's our way forward, honestly. Like, forget zoning changes and forget if the community housing bylaw is not good enough, maybe we need to educate ourselves on what it would take to do a friendly 40B, and would it be one of our friendly partner developers that would do that, and then we would help sell it to the community so it's not seen as a hostile 40B.
Yeah, I think that if we're looking at developing some level of affordable housing, 40B is going to enter into the equation. And it's certainly easier to go that route than to be making spot changes in the zoning code
Correct.
to enable a particular project.
Okay.
But you need a project of some density to interest anybody in doing a 40B.
So I'd
Well, we're
be
going to need a
willing,
project of some density to get a developer interested, period.
Correct.
Well, there's a
I'd be willing.
cluster zoning bylaw in existing now. Has anybody been using that?
No. That's another, mysterious, very complicated bylaw in our zoning code that I think was based on some model at the time.
Yeah.
But I've looked at the cluster, open space cluster zoning bylaw, and it is not easy to understand.
All right. Okay, can I bring up, if you want to, we got a minute or two left.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed in the news lately, and I think may be an appropriate role for this committee, and I'll send you some information. I didn't have time to do it today, is the Franklin County Regional Housing Authority is offering loans for home modifications for different things for handicapped people, from ramps to railings to fences to doorways, whatever. They've had an ad in a newspaper, the back page, saying if you're interested, contact the housing authority and for further information. I think that it may be an appropriate role for this committee to I don't know, advertise or announce or whatever that this is available to homeowners in Whately that may not be aware of it. If you get the newspaper, either the Greenfield or the Northampton paper, yes, you're aware of it. But other than that, I don't know where you would see this information.
We can put it in the scoop. I think there's a December.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's get it into the
what
scoop.
we tried to do in the past effort with what the Franklin County Housing Authority did, they offered assistance back in the COVID time for families that couldn't afford the rent units and for some improvements. And what this housing committee did back then, we sent out a postcard to every resident in town that had a mailbox and told them, if you're having problems because of COVID to meeting your family needs, to contact the Franklin County Housing Authority and Whately Housing Committee. We sent that out to somewhat 400, 500 people in town on a postcard. Housing Committee paid for the postage. We sent it out. We got very few, if any response to it. I guess my question is, should we do this for this home modification loan program that's available for helping seniors and handicapped people in town? Is that a role that this housing should take?
If I can, I would think no for this. The COVID era thing was more urgent. It was
right. Okay.
to deal with a specific time, financial crush given the time. This is a general program which will go on for a while, and I don't know that expending town money to advertise this as opposed to any other FERCog program, and they've got quite a few.
Well, it doesn't say how long
is necessary.
But what I might be, Fred, why don't you send me a link or point me to that information? Email that to me, because I think it would be, easy and free to put something on the Facebook page,
Right.
Put a little piece. We probably one of these days should write a little piece and get something into the scoop, and I'd be happy to do that. And maybe even, print a small number of one-page flyers that could be left at town offices, for example. So I don't know about sending 400 or 500 postcards, but I think getting word out about this could be worthwhile, and we don't have to spend a lot of time and money to do
it. I agree. I mean, we put it on a Facebook page, put a link on the website. At upcoming select board meeting, I can make a note of it in the board liaison section and say, go to the website and check it out.
The scoop.
Things like that. And, a short piece in the scoop
I'll try to, I haven't looked on their homepage to see if this is on there. I guess I could scan in the page for the newspaper. If I have a big enough scanner, I'll have to see.
Okay.
The other thing is the other office, I guess, not a town office or committee, but there's the, what's it, Valley Neighbors? What's it called? Valley
Valley.
Neighbors, yes.
Neighbors, that may know of people that are having difficulty in their homes like this because they supposedly go in and help people provide assistance. I don't know exactly what they do inside the home, but as far as transportation and minor tasks, whatever, they may know people that have a need to make some modifications.
Yeah.
I could
I know
share.
somebody who's on the Valley Neighbors board. So again,
Yeah,
Fred, if
my
you
husband
send
is on the
me,
board.
Okay, there's a
Well-
meeting tomorrow. I could mention this at the meeting tomorrow if you want and see if they are aware of the need for this, maybe.
I think it'd be helpful to have like the equivalent of a
Yeah.
one-page flyer that summarizes this information. And again, Fred, if you get me a link to where I can find all the details, I could distill it down into a one-page flyer that could be emailed, it could be printed, whatever.
Okay, but I think, again, that's a role that maybe the housing committee should do. I mean,
I
it's
agree. I
no
agree.
cost, that it's showing our involvement and our willingness to help people in town, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it forward.
All right. So I think that's all we're going to do tonight. I'm going to take an
Actually,
action.
one more thing.
Oh, go ahead, Montserrat.
Yeah, sorry. I was at the last meeting I said I would get some information from the CPC about how
Oh,
much
yes.
money is in the housing bucket, and so I just wanted to
Yes.
let you know.
Okay,
Including the fiscal year 26 revenue in the housing bucket, there is $157,000 of dedicated money for housing. And in order
Still,
to,
yep.
did
Yeah,
you want
go
to say
ahead.
something?
Nope, go ahead.
In order to transfer the funds into the housing trust, we need to submit a funding application, which there's a link to on the Whately.org website, just like any other funding project. And that has to be done by December 9th, and then it's voted for at the next town meeting.
how much is in the housing trust?
It's like
I think it's
110.
115.
Yeah, it's 115, 120, somewhere in that area. But also keep in mind with CPC money, there's 157 in the housing bucket. There's a lot more uncommitted. If we had a project that CPC might want to fund, there is money beyond that that we would have to apply for and see if we could get.
So that's-
But we are not limited necessarily to what is in our bucket.
Thanks.
No, so that's 272 you got roughly, okay.
Yeah. But it is constrained generally by the terms of the grant agreement. You know, we can't just spend that money willy-nilly, right? The CPC puts restrictions on how we use those funds.
Yes. But if there's a housing project that is within their
Correct.
purview, and as long as they don't put unreasonable restrictions on the money, if we've got a project that is worthwhile, I'm sure we could work something out with them.
Okay. All right. I'll take the action in advance of our next meeting to do a little research on the 40B process and what a friendly 40B might look like, just because I'm curious now, and maybe our next scheduled meeting, it looks like would be on Monday, November 10th. And I think I may not be able to make that particular meeting because I may be coming back from Baltimore, and who knows, there may be no air traffic control. God only knows what'll be going on the 10th. Is there, so we may by email want to look at alternate dates. And I'd have to look at my calendar and see.
Could we decide it right now, or do people need to look into things?
I don't know my schedule. I mean, or somebody else chairs the meeting and I attend if I can. I might be home and able to make the meeting, or I might not.
Can we do the following week, the
Yeah, I'm
17th?
fine with moving it to the following week, the 17th.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah, it works for me too.
Shoot. And I had promised somebody on the 17th to be at UMass from 4:30 to 5:30. So
We could push it, half an hour later if you need that.
yeah, maybe we'll try that to make it 6:30 on the 17th.
Yeah.
Or can I just ask about the 3rd?
Oh, the 3rd, November 3rd.
Third's no
November
good
3rd.
for me.
Oh.
November, what was that, Fred?
The 3rd is no good for me.
Oh, okay. All right. I was completely open on the 3rd. All right. So we'll tentatively say it's going to be on the 17th at 6:30.
That's
Okay.
good for me.
Yep.
Yep,
For
for
me.
me.
All right. I'll just nail that down. But I assume that since I'm the only person at risk on the 10th, if I were to say I could comfortably make it on the 10th, we could go forward with that date, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So let me take that action. So we have a plan A and a plan B. All right. Very good. So let me stop screen sharing.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Yeah. So Fred Orlowski, is that a motion?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
Okay. Does anyone want to second that?
Second.
All right. Montserrat is seconded. Roll call. Fred Orlowski.
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Montserrat.
Yes.
And I'm yes. So we are adjourned until our next meeting date.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Have
All
a
right.
good night.
Thanks. Good night.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.